Hi, this is Reverb Audio and we are in my garage and I'm going to show my boombox and I use it as an example to show loudspeaker placement. How much does it impact the character of the sound you are getting from a loudspeaker? And I know this is not a high-end loudspeaker, this is just a plain boombox, but as regards to loudspeaker placement, how much an effect the room has on its sound, exactly as much as on any of the highest high-end loudspeaker. So here it goes. And why I am showing is because today I spent the past couple hours in the garage and working on projects, and I used to have this boombox on the floor. So it was on the floor, and whenever I work on one of my projects, then just turn it on and you know, just listen to some Pandora, just stream it. And it sounds pretty darn good actually. I really enjoy listening to it, and as you can hear, the garage is a little bit echoey, so there's a lot of free space and a lot of room, and actually it's a pretty long garage. It's about 8 meters long, something like 25 feet or so, 26, 27, and I enjoy the sound a lot. It has a really full mid bass, and the mid bass I'm getting in the garage is actually quite a bit better than just about 50% of the audiophile systems I heard in totality. And under better, I mean more enjoyable. I enjoy like any kind of songs that I hear from the radio much more on it than on listening to it on a number of audiophile systems. And I tell you guys why is that happening. And that's happening because I used to have the boombox on the floor. And when you have a loudspeaker on the floor, then the floor acts as a boundary. So basically it creates a half space for your loudspeaker. So basically there's the cone, there's the woofer cone of the loudspeaker, and when that sits on the floor provides a boost for the bass. How much is a boost? Actually so much of a boost that that the mid bass is actually so strong that when it sits on the floor, that if I'm working like for 6, 7, 8 hours in the garage, then up by that time I'm really fatigued by it. So it's like the bass is too much, and that's how it is when the mid bass dominates the sound. First of all, then whatever you hear is very enjoyable. You think it sounds good, but on the long run, it's really fatiguing, and then by that time I'm really just very happy to turn it off. But in the first hour it's very enjoyable, and it, as I said, it just gives a lot of energy to work on projects, on manual projects. However, what I am saying and why I made this video now after working on stuff in the garage is because I mounted it up in the wall, and one of my reasoning to mount it up there is to remove it further from the floor boundary, so it doesn't have as much of a bass boost, and I can tune that mid bass hump down. And actually by placing it up so high, that is true, and in fact I did not just manage to take the mid bass bump lower, I took it way lower. So now actually it's the highs that are dominating the sound, so the sound totally flipped. And this is my message for you, that when you are positioning a loudspeaker or when you are designing a loudspeaker, if you have your woofer close to the floor, or you have a port that's firing downwards, that gives a tremendous low bass boost. So for example, if you have a loudspeaker, if you have a floor standard loudspeaker, and you feel that it does not have enough mid bass, or it doesn't have enough low, like deep bass extension, then the way to fix that is, if it's a ported design, to move the port to fire downwards. And it's, in the case of this little fellow, it was not just like providing that mid bass hump, but it also gave me some perceptible deep bass as well. And now that it's up there, I don't have the floor boost anymore. All of the deep bass is completely gone. It's non-existent. And that's why it's really critical when you build your loudspeaker. If it's a floor, I mean, it's on a stand, so it doesn't have the floor boost, and it's up here or anywhere there. In my case, it's really high up, but it doesn't need to be as high up. Even if it's at this height, like for a bookshelf speaker, you already will totally lose the floor boost effect. And that's one reason why a bookshelf loudspeaker has so much less bass than a floor standard, because you are not benefiting from the floor boost. But a lot of floor standards don't benefit either, in case the drivers are set up high and the ports are set high. But for a lot of floor standards, you notice that although the drivers are up high, the ports are low towards the bottom of the loudspeaker. And when that happens, then that floor standard is using the floor boost to bring up the low end. So it means that it will have a lot more mid bass and a lot more deep bass. And how much more? It can be a night and day difference. And that's the night and day difference that prompted my video to use as an explanation tool for this phenomenon, because for this boombox it was the exact thing that happened when this very same rock, that ion block rocker boombox, less than $100, it did cost something like 15 years ago, and when it's on the floor, it has great mid bass and it has perceptible deep bass, a little bit, not much, but a tiny bit, surprisingly amount actually, from such a very bottom end and cheap and compact little product. But when it's placed up there, then the bass completely disappears. And that's the effect you are getting from any other sort of loudspeaker technology as well. And that's the reason why, if you have loudspeakers that are sitting on tall stands, you are never going to get as much deep bass from them as a floor standard, because with a floor standard you can couple the deep end to the floor. And sadly, only very few loudspeakers use that tremendous effect, to use the floor to give you that extra boost in the low end. And if you are willing and up for that, then you can build your loudspeaker project to incorporate the floor boost. And when you do that, you don't need a subwoofer anymore, because your loudspeaker is capable to go just about an octave lower compared to having that port far away from the floor. And you would say that, does that compromise imaging? No, not at all. What compromises imaging when you put the loudspeaker close to the wall behind it, because that's when you get the real wall reflections coming from the upper frequencies which are close to the driver. But if you are using the floor boost, then the floor is the same distance from your tweeter and from your mid-range driver, as if you were not using the floor boost. It doesn't make any difference for the mid-range frequencies. Actually, it's even better for them, because now the only reflection from the port that the mid-range driver sees is the one that's bouncing from the floor. And when you have the port like midway or closer to the floor, if it's midway, then the first reflection that the will interact with your mid-range is the one that's getting reflected from the back wall. And there's another that will be reflected from the floor as well. So it's getting a multitude of reflections. So you get a more messy imaging if you have your port somewhere up. If you have it directly firing on the floor, that's when you get a cleanest imaging from a ported loudspeaker. So thank you guys for tuning in for this unusual report. I hope it gives all of you some ideas, and have fun with it. Take it home, play in your head with some calculations on how that would work out. Just a quick word of advice: if you bounce your port from the floor, it will mean that you are getting plus 6 dB bump up in the low energy response. So what you will need to do is tune the port much lower compared to tuning a port which is at a high level. And then if you don't tune it lower than a port spaced high up, then you are going to get a very strong mid-bass hump, and you don't want that. Or maybe you want that, but if you don't want to overblow the mid-bass, then tune the port lower, so then the mid-bass will be more level, and then you will have a very nice extension for the very deep frequencies. The octave below the octave you can perceive with your port that's firing high up or midway up your loudspeaker. So have a wonderful day. Bye bye.